First, let me affirm something really important. God-fearing couples have not just the permission, but the blessing to embrace and enjoy their sexuality within the bonds of marriage. Your desire to explore and express your intimacy in new ways with your wife is both normal and I'd say very healthy. It's a beautiful part of growing closer and experiencing joy together. Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. Welcome to this episode of Get Your Marriage On. I'm so grateful you're here and so grateful that you listen to this podcast. We've got a great lineup of topics today. Today we're going to address some questions that come anonymously through our website, and we'll get to talk about some really exciting topics such as how to deal with sex and intimacy while you're pregnant and postpartum. We're going to talk about what to do when you're hesitant about taking sexy photos or nude photos of each other, what to do when you have a spouse that's obsessed with swinging and you disagree with it, and also the last one we'll address is how one couple is in a situation where a masturbation habit is interfering with intimacy and pleasure for the couple. We recently polled our Instagram audience. Thank you if you follow me on Instagram. I love what you say. I love your comments. And it's a great way to kind of interact with you, kind of behind the scenes. If you don't follow me yet, it's Get Your Marriage On Instagram is where you'll see me. In a recent poll, over 700 of you marked that 2/3 of you wish sex was better in your marriage. I'm just grateful that you're here. This is the right place to be. I love and care about you. I think about you constantly, and I prepare these podcast episodes with you in mind. If there are other future topics that you would like me to address, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear what's on your mind, how I can help you in your marriage. That's what I love to do. I also want to thank you for reviewing this podcast. I recently received this review on Apple Podcasts, and this is what the person said. The podcast is a service to married people like myself who need a voice out there who understands that sex, faith, and committed desire can all exist and thrive together. Dan's passion and curiosity lead to some amazing insights. The guests bring in a wide range of perspectives and welcome suggestions on how to take your relationship into an even better place than it is today. Listen to this alone, or better yet, with your spouse. You'll be glad you did. Thank you for that wonderful review. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts and I read your review on the air, if you'll then email support@getyourmarriageon.com to let me know that you heard it, I will mail you a gift in the mail. So take a moment right now and open up the Apple Podcasts app and leave a review for Get Your Marriage On. And speaking of the podcast, recently we changed the artwork for a podcast cover. Let me know what you think. It has a photo of Emily and I there instead of just a blue square. Emily and I got a photo shoot done recently, and we frankly like the new photos. We have our upcoming retreat around the corner, and bad news, we've sold out for the retreat. So if you're hoping to come, we're out of room. Thank you to everyone that has purchased the tickets. So if you want to come to a future retreat, be sure to check our website and join the waiting list for when we announce the plans for our next retreat. Speaking of which, I have something really big planned and coming up soon. It's a new program. It's a way to bring much of what happens at the retreat as far as content and the experience goes, and to bring it into your home in a way that's more affordable, especially for those that really can't attend a retreat. So stay tuned for those things. Today is a Q&A episode. These are people that have sent in questions anonymously, and I sincerely appreciate your questions. I appreciate you're willing to open your heart and trust me with some of the difficulties that you're facing when it comes to sex and intimacy in your marriage. I honor you and I'm grateful for your thoughts and questions. Now, I get lots of questions and I can't address all of them, but I will do my very best to address all the ones that I can. If you want to send me a question, it's really easy. You go to getyourmarriageon.com, click on resources, and then anonymous questions. And it's just a 2-question form, super easy. We've had 2 questions recently about building a good sexual relationship while pregnant and after pregnancy. Before you tune out here thinking you're not yourself dealing with pregnancy right now, I encourage you to listen anyway, because these principles will apply when life circumstances put you in a situation when there are things getting in the way of gaining it on. I'm grateful for these couples that have asked us questions about navigating sex and intimacy during pregnancy. Emily and I have 6 kids, and we've had 9 pregnancies together. So, from personal experience, I get that this can be a really tricky time. My youngest is now 6 years old, though, so an answer or a perspective coming from someone who's in the middle of pregnancy right now might be more helpful to these couples that ask these questions. So, I reached out to my friend Sally, who is currently expecting her 6th child, to share a few things from her own perspective and experience about navigating sexual intimacy during pregnancy. I figured this would be more meaningful than just me sharing my own insights. So, here's a snippet of our conversation. So, Sally, you're about to have a baby. When's your baby due?
Couple of days now. We're just counting the days. So this is
Congrats.
number 6. Been there, done that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good. So, Sally, I have had this question come through. It says, I'd love for you guys to do a podcast on intimacy during sex. We've had a high risk pregnancy, which means no intercourse. I'd love to hear some ideas on how to keep things going, even during a time like that. So, Sally, what do you think about that?
So I haven't had the no intercourse prescription as far as like the high risk part, but I've had lots of kids. I'm about to have my 6th child, and many of my pregnancies have come with not just morning sickness, but it's extreme morning sickness called hyperemesis gravidarum.
Mhm.
And it's not very common. I think it's like 2-3% of women get it. So a lot of people don't understand it.
Uh-huh.
But I had IV fluids for about 3 months every single day, which meant, I was just a barely functioning person as far as a spouse, a mother, and just as an individual. I was just truly getting by.
Uh-huh.
So the pregnancy begins very difficult for me. Lucky for me, the hyperemesis does not last all 9 months, which can happen for some women, but definitely presents a lot of difficulties in my relationship. My husband is taking on a lot more, being pretty much mom and dad, taking care
Right.
of our household, taking care of our kids. And I slept a lot. So time for us to connect intimately was definitely limited and not necessarily something that was at the top of my list because I'm just barely functioning, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like? What can it look like? I think a lot of it was just the simple act of intimacy, not necessarily intercourse itself, but his love was shown for me in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Just the things that I mentioned, him carrying the load of so many other things is definitely like a turn on for me. Like I want to have that sexual relationship with him. It's driving that desire, but my body maybe isn't actually in the place and in the space to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. And now that you're about 9 months along,
Yes.
ways do you and others in pregnancy adjust to have a thriving sexual relationship with your husband, even while you're still?
Yeah. Yep. So very pregnant. What's different about this pregnancy from the past is because my husband and I are in a different place in our relationship, a better place. I actually have desire to have sex, even almost to the day here. I'm a few days away of giving birth.
Uh-huh.
And I have noticed in myself, like, that's a big change,
Mhm.
our relationship. Often pregnancy was used as an excuse of like, okay, hands off, like, leave me alone. I'm pregnant. I'm doing enough already. Like, I've already got enough going on in my body. I don't need one more thing. And so it was used as an excuse of like, leave me alone. Don't touch me.
Mhm.
And so I can see the change in our relationship just in that fact, like, hey, actually, I want this. Hey, actually, it could help me have a baby. Let's try this.
Yes,
maybe,
exactly.
maybe it'll work the magic here the next couple of days.
Uh-huh.
Um, what we've just different approaches, like, so maybe actual intercourse is not an option, or I'm not feeling well, or I'm too tired. Like, those are realities of pregnancy.
Mhm.
So other options are just like mutual masturbation. Like it's still there. We're still connecting. He can use a condom. There's other things out there. Like I'm not sure what they're called. They're like a little egg thing,
Yeah,
something that
yeah.
kind of
Uh-huh.
that fits over the penis but catches everything. So not as much mess there.
Uh-huh.
Even
Those are the
maybe
Tenga
there.
Easy Beat eggs. They're great,
Yeah, they're
right?
great. They're fantastic. Like no cleanup, like just makes it so much easier. Vibrators for sure, but there's just being more open to different ways of connecting and pleasing each other and just feeling close. Like that's still something I have desired, like I said, even this far in pregnancy. I mean, we've used Dan, your app has, if you want to filter the sex positions, you've put a tab there that says pregnancy safe. I think that's what it says,
Uh-huh,
pregnancy safe
uh-huh,
positions. We've explored that with pregnancy. A lot of women experience, I don't know, second, third trimester varicose veins. They can also be vulvar, so varicosities,
uh-huh,
which can be really painful. And so exploring the different positions has something that we've had to try because it can, like, the day after sex can be really painful, like 24 hours where I just can barely walk around.
uh-huh.
So as we've explored different positions, that's helped. Like I've found what's worked and what hasn't. So just making small adjustments and a lot of communication.
That's great. Do you think some couples confuse love for sex? And what I mean by that is you can be very loving through your sexuality, but some couples could use sex as a way of taking, but it's not really loving, yet they confuse sex for love.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. And I think if that is the mentality, it's probably going to present in the relationship more, not just in the bedroom, but in a lot of areas of the relationship.
Because then they think, well, if we can't have sex because we're having a baby, that means I can't love you or you can't love me because they
Right.
conflate the two. What about after the baby comes? We have another person that wrote in with this question. She says, how to be intimate postpartum, especially when there's no time for, as you're both focused on your child.
Yeah, this is something that we have been discussing because with other children, other pregnancies, we've kind of just gone on autopilot. Like life is hard and we can't control it. We don't have any choice here. It's just going to be hard. So, with the things that we've learned and the way that our relationship is, we've had conversations even as of, like a couple of days ago, anticipating, knowing that things are going to be hard, like, we're not gonna sleep for a long time. That
Uh-huh.
in itself makes, your relationship, whether it's sex or not, it just makes things harder.
Hmm.
So I think having the conversation, like, what can we do? What can we anticipate to make things better? What communication can we have when things are hard? I mean, with that, you have 6 weeks postpartum that there's no sex.
Uh-huh.
Personally, for me, I that's gonna be hard. I'm going to want to have sex during the 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
So, what can that look like? What can it be different? After that, I think it's each person listening to their body, for the woman especially, listening to her body, making sure that she's healing and taking the steps necessary there, make sure she is comfortable. Again, I think a lot of it's just communication, just being open and having those hard conversations with each other, deciding, what does sex look like? Intercourse, does it look like something else?
Mhm.
How can you connect intimately without sex? Because that is absolutely, just as good and just as beneficial for your marriage.
That is so good. Thank you, Sally.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. Love talking with you.
Okay, here's the next question I received. This man says, my wife and I have a wonderful marriage that has been enriched by your resources. We especially enjoy using your apps. Thank you. However, my question involves your Just Between Us app. I was exposed to pornography a few times as a teenager, but am grateful that I had never struggled with a pornography addiction. Also, my wife and I grew up in the era before cell phones, so sexting and all the dangers associated with cyberspace was never a part of our personal culture or upbringing. Having said all that, however, I'd really love to be naughty with my wife concerning nude photos of her and even myself. I was even tempted to purchase the DIY boudoir photo package for her they offered last month, but was too scared to do so. In our sexy, playful, and intimate moments, I've teased that I want to take her picture. She smiles and says, go for it. But I had this huge fear that our images will be out there somewhere in cyberspace for others to see. And deep down, I know she shares this concern too. Even with the Just Between Us app, I wonder, how secure is it? And if I'm being honest with myself, is it normal for me to want pictures of my wife in that way? Thank you in advance for your help, and thanks again for showing God-fearing couples that it's okay to embrace and enjoy our sexuality in marriage. Thank you so much for reaching out with your question and for your honesty. It's heartwarming for me to hear how our resources and apps are enriching your marriage. Your question touches on a very important, delicate aspect of marital intimacy, though, and I'm here to offer some thoughts and encouragement that I hope helps you. First, let me affirm something really important. God-fearing couples have not just the permission, but the blessing to embrace and enjoy their sexuality within the bonds of marriage. Your desire to explore and express your intimacy in new ways with your wife is both normal and I'd say very healthy. It's a beautiful part of growing closer and experiencing joy together. I understand, though, the concerns you and your wife might have regarding technology, especially when it comes to something as personal as sharing nude photos with each other. It's okay to be unsure or worried about the security of digital spaces. This is why I designed the Just Between Us app. I wanted something that I felt safe, where my wife and I could share these kinds of materials together without the worry of it accidentally showing up somewhere that I did not want it to go. So, in designing the Just Between Us app, I've taken substantial measures to ensure the highest possible level of security to keep your intimate moments just that, just between you. However, I recognize that in today's digital age, the worry about privacy is ever present and very real for many couples. So I don't know if you'll completely be resolved of that caution or that fear that you have of your photos. So, what do you do about it? There are some other wonderful alternatives you can consider. For example, you can use a Polaroid or an instant camera. These cameras offer the immediacy of capturing your intimate moments while keeping them offline and in your hands only. Another alternative is to use a digital camera that isn't connected to the internet, so don't use your cell phone. That way, your photos aren't automatically backed up to the cloud and you have full control over how and where they're stored. Then you can decide what you want to do with those photos, whether it's keeping them in a private album or something else that respects your comfort and privacy. I just want to share another story that might give you another perspective. A while back, I received an email from a man who recently lost his wife in a tragic accident. Amidst his deep grief, he expressed gratitude to me for the intimate photos that they had shared during their marriage on the Just Between Us app. These photos weren't just about the excitement of being nude and naughty. They also held profound emotional significance for him, capturing the intimacy and love they shared. It was a reminder that these moments are treasures, capturing the depth of their connection in their marriage in a way that words just sometimes can't do so. So I encourage you to try stepping a little outside your comfort zone. Growth and new experiences often come from pushing ourselves beyond our usual boundaries anyway. So start small, see how it feels, and then communicate openly with your wife about the experience. Remember, it's about adding another dimension to your intimacy, one that brings joy, connection, maybe even a bit of playful naughtiness into your marriage. Embracing this part of your relationship could be a beautiful journey of discovery, so go ahead, explore together, and see what goodness comes from it. The next question is from a wife, and this is what she says. My husband is obsessed with swinging and seeing and talking about me with other people. We've dabbled in it, but I always feel super guilty about it. He thinks it's okay because we are married and whatever we do is biblically acceptable as long as we both agree to it. I go back and forth. What are your thoughts? First of all, if those of you that aren't familiar, swinging refers to married couples, usually married couples hooking up with other couples, swapping wives, swapping husbands, and the lifestyle, it's a practice of having sex with other people besides your spouse. I'm grateful that you emailed this question to me because I understand that navigating the feelings where you feel torn between wanting to make your husband happy with his obsession and staying true with your own feelings can be really challenging. It sounds like you're caught in a tough spot, having to choose between your husband's desires and your own peace of mind. Listening to your heart is going to be really crucial here. If you're feeling guilty, it might be an indication that these actions are not in alignment with your personal integrity or the values that you hold. So guilt often serves as an internal compass, signaling when we might be veering off our path of authenticity. So, I suggest you consider the long term here. It's essential to ponder what continued engagement in the swinging lifestyle could mean for you and your marriage. Ask yourself, what are the potential outcomes of dabbling in swinging? The fruits of our actions often reveal their true nature. As it says in the Bible, you will know the tree by its fruits. By examining the results of engaging in swinging, for example, you can ask yourself whether these experiences are bringing you closer together or creating a wedge between you. Are they enhancing your connection as a couple, or are they introducing elements of doubt and insecurity? Is it undermining the intimate connection between you? I believe living with integrity is foundational for fostering deep intimacy in a marriage. If fostering a close, intimate relationship is your goal, embracing honesty with yourself and your partner is a step forward towards preserving the sacred bond that you share. While I hesitate to definitively state what is and isn't biblically acceptable, like you mentioned in your question, I can share some of my personal observations. In my experience, couples who embrace swinging often don't find it conducive for deeper intimacy. While these couples might remain together, the intrinsic connection that defines a profoundly intimate relationship tends to diminish over time. It erodes that intimate foundation in the relationship. On a biological level, I believe sexual engagement creates bonds and triggers emotional and physical responses unique to intimate relationships. The endorphins and hormones and chemicals released during sex are there to bond us to the person that we're sexually with. So, the implications of sharing these sexual experiences outside the marital bond are complex and are worth considering in your decision-making process here. I also recognize there are times when having a backbone and disappointing your spouse in the name of integrity is sometimes the right thing to do. So follow your heart on this one. Think long term, look to the fruits, and hopefully you can find a path that honors both you and your husband's needs while maintaining the integrity of your marriage. Here's the last question that I will be addressing on today's podcast. This wife says, "Thank you for all you do to help couples develop better sexual relationships. I've been married for 4 months now, still in the honeymoon phase, and definitely still have a lot to learn. My husband had a masturbation addiction before we were married. It is now affecting our sex life. I told him I would allow him to masturbate only when I am present. The main issue with this is that he only ever comes for himself. There have been only a very few times that he has come for me from something I was doing to him. This usually leaves me feeling that I cannot do enough to satisfy him. He can last a very long time before he reaches orgasm, and it can get tiring for me after 2 or 3 hours. He says I am doing a good job, but I feel so inadequate. I kept thinking I just need to improve my techniques or force myself to continue going for it longer before I stop. But after the past 4 months of almost daily sex and trying a huge variety of things, I'm getting discouraged when he still doesn't orgasm from what I do to him. I do not like that he always has to resort to masturbation to finish. We have discussed this, and he understands how it makes me feel. But we have also tried blowjobs, hand jobs, and penetration without him touching himself, and it very rarely ends in orgasm. I can only recall a couple times that I have been the one who made him come. I am not opposed to having his help or even letting him masturbate to finish at times, but preferably, most of the time, I would like to be the one to give him what he needs without him having to do it himself. We have tried taking longer breaks between sex sessions, but he often caves and either masturbates or begs for sex. The longest we have made it without doing anything was 3 days. He has mentioned that buying toys might help us. I want to feel like I can be the one to give him the pleasure he needs and deserves, so I hesitate on if toys will help accomplish that. I have brought up going to a sex therapist, but he says he doesn't feel like we are at that point where we need that yet. What can I do to keep from getting discouraged and feeling that I am not good enough? Do I need to shut down his masturbation habits completely? Should I try going to therapy without him? I look forward to hearing your advice. First off, congratulations on our recent wedding, and the honeymoon phase is a very special time, filled with learning and growing together, and also filled with some surprises, it seems. It's clear that you're both committed to developing a healthy and satisfying sexual relationship, which is good and wonderful to see. It sounds like you're definitely facing challenges with your husband's past masturbation habits, and it's affecting your intimacy. It's not just affecting your sexual relationship, but the intimate connection too. It's understandable that this would lead to feelings of inadequacy for you and frustration. I want you to know that I have compassion for you and I know how this habit can be interfering with your connection, and I really want to help. I highly recommend exploring sex therapy or sex coaching sooner than later. As a sex coach myself, I know that the coaching process can offer valuable insights and strategies tailored to your specific situation. If you're interested, I'd be more than happy to work with you individually or as a couple to navigate this journey together. Our brains are incredibly adaptable, learning and reinforcing behaviors through repetition. This is often called the myelin effect, where, as they say, neurons that fire together wire together. Your husband has, over time, conditioned his body to respond in a very specific way to achieve orgasm. To shift this pattern, he would need to actively engage in retraining his body to find pleasure and climax through shared sexual experiences. I recognize that this can be very frustrating for you. However, it's really crucial that you remember that this change must be something he genuinely wants for himself. It's not something you can decide or do for him. Of course, you can threaten him, pressure him, control him, but I don't think any of those things will solve the thing. It's got to be something he chooses himself. At the heart of your concern that you emailed me, it seems that it's a feeling of inadequacy, which is leading to a desire for you to control your husband's habits. And I don't blame you. It's important, though, to confront and challenge these feelings of control. Ask yourself, what do you want this marriage to be about? Do you want this marriage to be one where there's control to manage your feelings of inadequacy? Or do you want this to be a marriage that's about honesty, truth, and intimacy, even if it hurts a little bit at first? Please don't misunderstand me. This shouldn't sound harsh, but marriages where control becomes the default end up having much more problems and difficulties down the road. So, because you're newly married now is a good time to recognize your tendency to go to control. When I say go to control, these are things like saying you're not allowed to masturbate unless I am there, or you need to shut down your masturbation completely and only have sex with me. That's like a control move. You're putting yourself in a position of authority over him where you're taking a one-up position in the dynamic of your marriage. I know you have good intentions behind this, but I encourage you to think about this a little bit more broadly. When you control his sexual behavior to satisfy your own inadequacy or to cover up your own inadequacy, it sets up your marriage in a power struggle that's going to continue for years. So the solution then is recognizing that your husband's really the only person that can change this if he wants to. And I recognize that this means your husband may not choose to change his habit, which will be very heartbreaking for you. But he might choose to change on his own too. But unfortunately, that's not in your control. That's 100% up for him. So what do you have control over? You have 100% control over your response in this situation. You can express your disappointment, your feelings of inadequacy, your heartache, and express how you wish sex between the two of you had deeper meanings. You can keep improving your technique. You can express how you don't want to resent sex with your husband, so let's not engage in the kind of sex where I just resent you all the time. You can also address your own feelings of inadequacy head on as well. I'm willing to bet that you're not as inadequate as you think. You're probably fully capable of sexually pleasing your husband. It's just a matter of learning how to do this together. Remember, the strength of a marriage isn't measured by the frequency or manner of orgasms, but it's by the depth of love, desire, connection, honesty, and openness you share with your spouse. You've taken a significant step by openly communicating your feelings about his habits. Continuing to be open and honest with him and have these dialogues with him about your feelings and struggles with your inadequacy is going to be really crucial for you two to keep growing together. I agree with you what you said about toys. I think toys can introduce new dimensions of pleasure. They can be a lot of fun, but they're not going to be a panacea for your underlying issues. Addressing your underlying issues of inadequacy is going to be first and foremost. And relying on toys as a solution might inadvertently reinforce the feelings of inadequacy you're experiencing if you don't address the root source of your inadequacy first. Remember, most couples committed to growth and understanding can overcome challenges, even big ones like this. It's about working together, staying open, being honest, and supporting each other through the journey. I highly encourage that you seek coaching, whether together or individually, because that can be a powerful tool to navigate these feelings and strengthen your bond. I just want to thank you for your support. I thank you for sending me your questions. Thank you for trusting me with the things on your mind and heart. I love providing resources to help you grow your marriage in a God-fearing, upbeat, and fun way. Thank you again for listening to this podcast. Please share it with your married friends. I'm sure they will thank you for life. And if you haven't yet, download our apps, the Intimately Us app and the Just Between Us app. Those two can also bless your marriage. Stay tuned for next week. We've got some great upcoming episodes planned for you. If you have a question you'd like me to address in a future episode and want to send it to me anonymously, you can do so at getyourmarriageon.com, click on resources and anonymous questions. Thanks and see you next week. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, or even comment below, and go see what other wonderful videos we have that will help you strengthen your marriage intimately.